Hi, welcome to Take Charge of Your Health. Simple steps you can do today to take control of your physical and mental health. I am your host, Dr. Melissa Balizan, and today I have with my friend with me here, Dr. Cherie Lechner-Lunato. She is a functional medicine chiropractor, along with a lot of other holistic practices she pulls into her chiropractic care of her patients, and we're going to talk today with her about joint support. So welcome, Dr. Cherie.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
I am so happy you are here. You have so many talents, and so we have just we've picked one out of the mix, and so we're going to talk about joints and a little bit with chiropractic care, and because we know that has an effect, especially on a lot of athletes. And so let's go back in time. How did you get started in chiropractic care? What led you down that path?
Well, I was actually looking at going to medical school. So when I was in undergraduate, I kept trying to, figure out what I wanted to do. And I looked at nursing and physical therapy, and all of my counselors like, nope, that won't be enough for you. Just my personality, right? And to be honest, for myself, I didn't take a lot of medications growing up because they made me sick, right? And I had this, for me, it was like I didn't want to go to school for 12 years to pump people full of drugs and watch them die. That was just my, wiring back then. And then I had some friends going into chiropractic, and I'm like, well, what is that? And I literally went to the library and I looked up the definition of chiropractic, and it made so much sense to me. I'm like, why don't more people believe in this? Right. And I should have had the definition here. I don't, but I remember it was something like, a bone, a subluxation being out of place and the nerve flow isn't there. And it made such perfect sense. And then I went to the school, and I was so impressed that I ended up going to chiropractic school, and my friends never did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you have actually taken chiropractic to the next level when you pull in functional medicine.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about joint support, functional medicine, chiropractic care. How does our bodies kind of respond to? Let's talk about food first. So we can talk about different things, but let's talk about food first, of how that makes a difference with our joints and our bones.
Oh, absolutely. No, food is medicine, just so y'all know. You are what you eat. And being a functional medicine chiropractor, and by the way, I've used nutrition my entire 30 years of practice. And what I learned on really early is people with good nutrition healed faster than people who didn't, right? So food is extremely important. And I'm sure that, most of you know that inflammation is our enemy. It is the root cause of all diseases. So there are foods that decrease your inflammation, and there are foods that increase your inflammation. And you can actually eat yourself healthy. I actually healed my son with food, and he had a gut and a brain issue from when he was a baby. And so I really do know what I'm talking about. And I practice what I preach. So, with joints specifically, just in general, but here's just off the cuff in general, you need clean food. Ideally, in a perfect world, you'd be eating organic, non-GMO, the rainbow of fruits and vegetables, and clean meats. And you would have 2/3 of your plate being, vegetables and meat, and limited carbohydrates. Because, sorry, carbohydrates are not your friend, especially simple carbohydrates and breads and pastas. They're just not our friend. So, when you're looking at overall health, because really your joints reflect your overall health. And I could go into all the different causes, but food, again, that inflammation is going to be the root cause. So, ideally organic, non-GMO, but you want to eat, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, but specifically for joint health, your fatty fish, or like foods rich in omegas, like walnuts, right? So fatty fish, your leafy greens, cherries, berries, And then even foods like spices like ginger or turmeric are really good for joint health. And most nuts are going to have some omegas, and also red apples, garlic, onions, really good for joints, and even red peppers. And then looking at foods that inflame us, that's all of your processed foods. So you want to eat real food, because your processed foods are going to cause inflammation. And sorry, but sugar, like especially processed sugar. So your cakes, your cookies, made with processed sugar, are going to cause inflammation. You know, I have patients that just by changing their diet, all their joint pain goes away, period. So any processed meats. And for some people, dairy can inflame them, but most of the time it's because they're eating traditional dairy. And that's going to have some hormones and things in it, where grass-fed dairy and grass-fed meats are high in CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, and it's actually anti-inflammatory. And then grass-fed beef has methionine, and it's the only place in nature that we can get that amino acid. So, and then also avoiding alcohol, right? And not smoking. It's not a food, but I'm just going to lump it in there because smoking is a big deal. And nightshades is something to avoid. So if you don't know what a nightshade is, that's your potatoes, your eggplants, your black pepper. A lot of people don't know that black pepper is a nightshade. Eggplant, asparagus, and artichokes are also, but some people don't react to those. And the other thing would be just your corn oil is a big one. So you want healthy oils, you want your healthy fats. And that would be like olive oils are going to be healthy, or coconut oil is going to be healthy, where your canola oils, but specifically for joints, corn oil is like a no-no. And other things like MSG, like those preservatives. So that's why I want to eat whole, healthy food.
I love it. I love it. Those are some great tips that we can take away from that. So when we're talking about joints and we're talking about inflammation, let's delve into maybe a word people have heard, arthritis, and what that, kind of what that does to the body. And maybe, there's two very distinct, osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm going to let you explain the difference between the two and how that inflammation affects our joints and is causing that arthritis potentially.
Yes. Yeah. And with that osteoarthritis, and here's what's crazy. You ready for this? There's over 200 forms of arthritis. Osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis are the most common. And it's estimated by 2040, 78 million Americans will have arthritis. That's devastating. That's why when you asked me to do a talk on joint health, I'm like, yes, 78 million. It's crazy. So osteoarthritis, there are many causes of arthritis, like smoking can give you arthritis, alcohol, your S.A.D diet, which is our standard American diet, which I just told you how to not do that, okay? Genetics, believe it or not, are a very, very, very small part, okay? Then your occupation, it can be metabolic, and a very small part is from infections, and then of course trauma, right? So osteoarthritis is more of our wear and tear, okay? Where rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune, actually. Your body is actually attacking, and there is a gene for rheumatoid arthritis, but here's the beautiful news. Did you know that we can turn our genes on and off with cell signaling? So that is even with foods, you can turn the gene off, because that's what functional medicine, I work with epigenetics. So we look at how can we create an environment to alter that gene expression. So you actually you are not hopeless. And if you're on here learning how to be healthy and there's people in your family, you don't have to end up in the same situation, right? And if you are in a situation, you can actually reverse it and slow it down. So you're not locked in. And that's where, with the osteoarthritis, especially if it's from an occupation, this is where I think chiropractic care really comes in. Is I'm all about alignment. Okay, because alignment is so important for joints. And there's more than one way to align a joint, but if you're in an occupation where you're in repetitive motion, your joints, they're going to work. Your body's a system of levers and pulleys, and they're going to work the best when they're in alignment, and you're not going to have that wear and tear. You're going to have some. It's just, even athletics, right? You're going to have some wear and tear. And then, but either one, I don't care if you have osteoarthritis or you have rheumatoid arthritis, inflammation is going to make it worse. And you have control over that by what you put in your mouth and how much sleep you get, and really lifestyle, how you live, how much movement and exercise you get. And we'll be getting probably into more of that, but I just want you to know that it's really about the lifestyle and the impact. And the more that you can work with reducing and keeping inflammation at bay, the healthier your joints will be and the healthier and happier you will be.
I love it. And that is exactly it. It's lifestyle, and it's looking at that whole picture. Both of us look at the holistic, we look at the functional piece, and that's looking to the root cause and looking at the whole picture, and what you put in your mouth affects the rest of your body. What you do to this piece affects the rest of your body. So let's talk a little bit about that favorite word everybody loves, exercise. And let's discuss, we'll rephrase it into movement, because I think that so many of us, we hear that word and we're like, oh no, exercise, I gotta exercise. Well, let's talk about what exercise does for our joints, or what movement does for our joints. And even talk, if somebody already has been diagnosed with, an arthritic condition, and they don't feel like they can do something, let's kind of roll all that in together. Okay.
No, absolutely. And movement is key, because if you're not moving, you're dying. Sitting is the new smoking. And there's a reason for that. And in fact, a very common, I don't know why this is coming up for me to share, but a very common time that people die is after they break a hip and they're stuck in bed, right? And oftentimes people's health just declines from that. And it's because they're not moving. And even if you can't walk right now, you can still be in a chair doing movement. You don't have to be stationary. And you want to do something that brings you joy, because honestly, exercise is no fun, right? If you're not joyful about it, it becomes a chore, it becomes work, you're not going to want to do it. And there's something about that, being happy about what you're doing, that also makes your joints feel better. The reason movement for any type of joint is that we need lubrication in our joints. We want that fluid. It's called synovial fluid, especially for our hinge joints, like our knees and our hips and our shoulders. They need that fluid, so you need to lube up your joints. So young people, they're just gonna ready, set, go. But we want to move because you also get circulation in there, because after the age of 16, the cartilage is no longer fed by blood flow. And in the hinge joints is actually fed by synovial fluid. So that fluid will bathe those tissues and give them the nutrition that they need, right? So your cartilage cells, and that's the cushion in your joints. So it's very important to do that. And also when you do move, and I recommend what I call cross training, right? Don't do the same thing every single time, right? And it's good to do some weight bearing movement and some non-weight bearing movement. So it could be swimming, Tai Chi, yoga, walking, lifting weights, doing Pilates, whatever. It could be kayaking, it could be roller skating, whatever makes you happy and feels good for you. It could be biking. Bicycling is a really great way to move the joints in your lower body. But swimming is one of the best, because you use all your joints, and you're not putting any weight bearing. And yoga is another one that's really great for the entire body, and Tai Chi as well. And that's a very fluid, and dancing uses your whole body as well. And so that's going to create that. And then you get fresh blood in there, And the joints actually, they can, if you are too set, they get kind of rusty. That's what I like to say, is they get rusty. There's actually little crystals that can develop in those joints. And so it feels sometimes for some people that they have glass in their joints. And that's part of that's toxicity. Part of that's sedentary and you're not moving. And part of that's metabolic and the foods you're eating. So it's really multifactorial. It's not just one thing, but that movement, I think of movement as life, right? The only time you see a baby not moving or a child is when they're sleeping, right? Because it's natural for us to move. So if you're in a situation where you have discomfort, for many, many, many times, the reason that you're having the pain is that you're not getting circulation. So that when you move, you get the blood flow and then it lowers the discomfort. Now with rheumatoid arthritis, if they're hot and swollen, there are things that you can do to reduce that inflammation on the joints. But even for them, you get them moving and that blood circulation is going to help. So that's why movement is so important with joints, because stiff, tight joints just aren't going to help us, right? And they can make everything harder. So, and stretching is really good too, because, you know, if your joints are stiff, you can stretch the muscles and even massage, right? And that can be a way of movement. So if you can't, say your hands are just, you could, you know, I call it loving on yourself, right? You can massage that joint and put your hand there and rub the muscles and rub the joint very gently. And that will help to open it up until it can move.
I love it. And that's exactly it. You have to find something that you find joy in and can be happy in doing, because then you're going to repeat it. And if you've been sitting around and not doing things, take it slow, you know, do just a little bit and get up and try one of those techniques. And especially, you know, do a non-weight bearing, like the swimming and the yoga. I love those examples that you've given, because that is something, you know, we want to make sure that it's something that everybody can pick something out that's going to work for them, that they're going to have fun with, and try it and get that moving. And so many of us, we sit at a computer. We're sitting at a computer right now doing this video for you guys. But we've got to make sure we get up and move around. We don't sit for X number of hours. You know, you want to get up and move at least every hour, if not sooner, just because those joints get stiff. And it reminds me of, popped into my head, the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You know, those little joints, it's like, oh, they're all stiff, and you need that oil can. And that's that circulation that we need, you know, in our body. So we've got to, you know, make that movement and get moving. So I love that.
Yeah, and Dr. Melissa, that includes our spine, right? So it's so important, because people don't think about the spine as something we need to care for, and there's a lot of joints in the spine that are crucial to our health and our well-being. And then moving, and even if you can't, if you can't walk right now, you can still do chair yoga. You can just do movement. You can dance in a chair or on a yoga ball that's supported against a wall, right? So there are ways to still move. And actually, if you couldn't, one thing I'm gonna tell you that kind of might blow your mind, that could make a difference if you couldn't move anything, is just visualize your leg or your finger or your arm moving. It's called visualization, and they know that the body can't tell the difference. So the brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imaginary. So if you cannot physically move your leg, but you visualize it moving, your brain will get the message, and there will be chemicals and circulation and things that get to that area just because you're visualizing it.
Oh, I love it. And that is so true, you know, with so many things. You know, you dream of something, and so you dream of moving your leg and you visualize that. I love it. It definitely works. I've seen it. Testimony, I have seen it work. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, so for movement, let's talk about alignment. You know, we talked about the spine, but let's talk about overall alignment and how that helps makes our joints healthy with being in alignment.
Yes. So when we're in alignment, first of all, when we do start with the spine, because every joint, by the way, if you have a joint issue in your knees or your elbows or your shoulder, your spine's out of alignment. I'm going to tell you that right now. And for example, if your neck is out, a shoulder can't heal because the nerve flow to that joint comes through the spine through little holes where all the nerves come off the spinal cord and they go to every muscle and every organ in your body. So and alignment can happen through chiropractic, doing PT, getting massage work, even yoga. Yoga, I love because it is the one form of physical activity that actually aligns your spine and your joints if it's done properly. Okay? It has to be done properly. But why it's so important is when things are in alignment, you get the nerve flow, you get the circulation, you're going to have enough lubrication, but you're not going to wear your joints out early. And this is what I see people all the time that if I had seen them when they were a child even or a teenager, they wouldn't be getting a knee replacement at 35 or 40 years old. Now, to be honest, not many of my patients get them because what we're able to do is so much. It's a very small percentage. So there's a lot more that can be done than you think. So that's why that alignment is so critical, because when our joints are open, and it's not always the joint itself that's out of alignment, it's because your muscles are tight and stiff, and the fascia, which is the covering of the muscles, which is like the covering on a fillet, that white skin is the fascia. It can actually get glued to the muscles from trauma and from not being used. And then that damages the joints because it's not moving. It's supposed to glide. And the fascia, believe it or not, can cause incredible amounts of pain. And they actually are considering it that it may be the primary nervous system over our actual nervous system. So you can think of the fascia as like, if you've ever heard that a forest, that all the roots go through the entire forest. And if you disrupt one part of the forest, it affects all of the trees. So it's like the fungus that have mycelium. It's the same thing in our body. So that's why the alignment is so critical, because it protects that joint. And it's just like, you've all driven a car, right? What happens when your wheels are out of alignment? You're getting new tires really fast and they're wearing out really fast. And your car's not running as well. You can't drive it as well. We're the same way. We need to be tuned up, right? And that's how humans thrive, is when we're at I like to call it full optimization, right? When we're all tuned up and ready to go.
I love that. And I love that analogy. And I think I may have mentioned that before is, it's our bodies. We need to take care of our bodies like we take care of our vehicles, because we go in and we get our tires rotated and we get new wheels and we get the oil changed and we get the whatever else needs to be done when we see those little check whatever lights come on. We don't necessarily always get that big flashing light come on for us, but we might feel it in a symptom or something, and that's our body saying, hey, guess what? It's time to change that, change the oil, check the engine, whatever for your body. And so I love that kind of analogy, and how, the analogy, especially with the forest, that how a body affects everything. And so let's talk about one other aspect of how most people would not think this, but how our emotions affect our joint health.
Yeah, I know. It's really wild, isn't it? But it's really true. Have you ever seen someone who's hurting with arthritis be happy? They're usually cranky, right? And they're sad and angry, right? Well, anytime that you have inflammation, it's like an itis. I like to tell people that's anger turned inwards, right? Because the joints are angry. Whenever we have irritation, right, they're angry. But our emotions, what I find, because, working with people's bodies and their minds, right, and all of it for 30 years, one thing I can tell you is that if you're stuck or rigid in your thinking, you're not flexible, If you're angry, there's a lot of unforgiveness going on. Your body reflects that. So our emotions, I have seen patients that just by talking with them and working through what's been going on, their pain completely disappears. It just goes away. And I know that might sound really wild, but I just want you to consider for a moment that you can actually do something about that. And the one thing I like to share with people is that, because I use that unforgiveness, right? Forgiveness frees the forgiver, not the sinner. So if you take your fist and it's closed, can you receive anything? Can you receive love? Can you receive joy? Can you receive even money? No. But if your hand is open, you can. So emotions, because our physical cells, and they've been able to prove this, by the way, this is scientific. It's not some woo-woo thing. They've been able to actually prove it because we actually even make grooves in our brain. So emotions follow our neurons. It's absolutely fascinating. And so you can change that just by changing your emotions and your thoughts, because usually we put meaning to things, right? And so by changing that, then we become more freed up, we're less controlling, we're not as stuck, we're not as angry, we're feeling more joy, and you just feel better overall. But that's why, is because emotions, and they've been able to, there's actually a book called Molecules of Emotion that was written by Candace Pert, who is an amazing, incredible neuroscientist, like the smartest person on the whole planet, who did these experiments, and they were actually able to prove that emotions affect your health and your body, and that includes your joints.
That's amazing. Wow. You wouldn't have thought, but I understand it. It does. It makes a world of difference. And let's talk about one more thing that that can affect our joints, and that's we talked about eating the right things, but let's talk about weight and how can being overweight or underweight affect our joints.
Sure. Yeah, the reason why we want to maintain a healthy weight, right, doesn't mean that you're a skinny mini, right? It's just about having a healthy weight for you, and everyone has their ideal weight. And it's really about body composition. So it's about having more lean muscle and less fat. So weight isn't always the true factor. But the reason why is we know, first of all, that when we're overweight, we're inflamed. And it's the secondary effect of all that inflammation that hurts us, like our heart, our joints, etc. But weight also puts extra pressure on the joints. So for example, when you walk, there's 1.5 times your body weight of pressure on your knee joints, your hip joints, your feet, 1.5 times. If you add an incline, the pressure gets even greater. And if you're going up and down stairs, it's 2 to 3 times your body weight. And if you squat to pick something off the floor or to tie your shoelace, it's 4 to 5 times your body weight. So if you weighed 100 pounds and you're squatting, you have 400 to 500 pounds on your knees. If you take that to 200 pounds, we're now at 8 to 1,000 pounds of pressure on those joints. And now imagine they're out of alignment. And now imagine you're inflamed. If that was a car, it'd be in the junkyard. And you are not junk.
That's right. We are not junk, and we should not be treating our bodies. We don't treat our bodies like we should. We need to definitely self-preserve and take care of our bodies. And thank you so much for all of that wonderful information on how impact, because I don't think we always think about that. Oh, it's just, it's a knee. It carries us to here to there. but we don't realize how much of an impact we're putting on that, that it's a weight bearing joint. So we have weight bearing walls in our houses that hold things up, and they're to a point, they have to have the right support, and they have to have the proper alignment of weight to, so that it doesn't topple over or collapse or whatever. And I think that's the same with our joints. If we're putting that extra pound of pressure on there when it's unnecessary, that's when we can run into leading into more greater inflammation, into arthritis, into other problems down the road if we don't take care of it sooner. And so I want to ask, just, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we tell them what you're going to gift them? Anything else that you'd like to mention about joint health?
Well, one thing I do want to say is that we don't realize how unhealthy joints impact our whole life. Because when I treat patients, one of the things that I'll see is that how it's impacted their life. They can't go to their, say, daughter's graduation, or they want to be able to dance at their son's wedding, or they want to be able to kneel down on the floor to play with a grandchild, or they love bowling and all of a sudden they can't, or they like golfing, right? So it can impact so much joy in your life. And so I think, that's the other thing, is that when you're caring for your joints, you're caring for your whole self. But there is, so just in general, you want to get as much nutrition from your food as you can, but you can also add some supplements that are really healthy for joint health, like omega-3 fatty acids, which are your fish oils, especially fractionated fish oils. Then we have things like ginger and turmeric and glucosamine and chondroitin sulfate also. And one thing I also realized I forgot to mention in the foods to avoid, and I can't even believe I forgot this, but it's wheat and gluten. Because I can tell you, from 30 years experience, when people have joint issues, it's going to be dairy, nightshades, or grains, and especially wheat and gluten, that is escalating their pain. So I invite you, one of the things that you can do is what's called an elimination diet, where you remove all the offenders for about 30 days. So if you do Whole30, that's a program, right? Whole30, where you just remove everything, including sugar. But when you start to put things back in, you really get to see how they affect you. And if you're not able to go all that way, you could just do a little bit. And then also a liquid collagen HA matrix is incredible for your joints, because it gives you the building blocks for continued joint health. Is really truly the best thing I've ever seen for joint health. But really, it's just having that mindset and caring for yourself like you would your own child, right? Because you do it for them, but why don't we do it for ourselves? We let everything in our life get in the way. So I like to tell people is that you want to put your oxygen mask on first, like when you get on the airplane, so you can care for other people. Because otherwise your loved ones get the least of you rather than the best of you. And so give that same love back to yourself by being mindful. And it's all about baby steps. So don't get overwhelmed like with anything I said and go, oh my goodness, right? No, it's you eat the elephant one bite at a time. So you make one change at a time. And for example, with that elimination diet, if you're like, oh my God, I could never do that. Pick one thing. Take out dairy. Do it for a month. And put it back in. And when you put it back in, you're going to have organic dairy, right? That's grass-fed, and see, and then challenge and see. So that's just an example there. And just know that you do have the power. You are not hopeless, and you do have power even now to stay healthy with your joints and to help restore.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for that extra bit. And yes, there is definitely some great supplements out there. One thing, so as a pharmacist, and I know you practice this as well, don't just buy what's off the shelf. That's not going to help you. So if you heard of a specific supplement that you wanted to try, please reach out and so that we can get you good high quality supplements, because we want to make sure that you're getting what's in there and what's not in there, because there's a lot of places that the supplements are not regulated. And so we want to make sure that you're getting a good high quality supplement. If you're going to take something to help your joints, we want to make sure that you are getting that good high quality supplement. So thank you, Cherie, for being on. And as a gift for those who are viewing, you have created something called the Happy, Healthy, Joyful Joints. So let's talk a little bit about what that is.
So that I am going to give everyone so y'all know, it's going to either be in an ebook form or PDF. I haven't decided which way I want to go with it, but of all my tips and tricks, how to have happy, healthy, joyful joints. Because if you have happy, healthy, joyful joints, you have a happy, healthy, joyful life. Because you're going to be able to move and live your life, the one life, quality of your life. So I feel it's that important to whatever you're put on this earth to contribute to the rest of us, because you can't do that when you're broke down or in pain, right? It makes it a lot harder. So this is to lift you up and give you some tools, really, and tips that you can do for yourself to keep your joints happy, healthy, and joyful.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for all of your knowledge and education you've given us today. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Cherie. I really appreciate having you on here today.
Yep. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching Take Charge of Your Health. I hope that you've been able to pick out some simple steps you can do today to take control of your physical and or your mental health. So take care. Have an amazing day.